So feel free to throw your questions in the chat box throughout the session, throughout the round. Should call it the round, really, shouldn't I? Throughout the round, throw in a few punches into the chat box. There we go. And we'll answer them as we go along. We have actually collected a few questions from the last round, and we've had a few questions emailed into us. So actually today's round, we're just going to kick it off with the questions that we've had. Before I do that, I know this is going to sound awful, but I haven't seen the announcement from Boris this afternoon, and I was wondering if there was any light to be shined on the situation. Can anyone sort of update me and anyone else that hasn't had a chance to see it?
I've seen a couple of headlines. I think if you're in tiers 2 and 3, then business events are thumbs up to certain. Is it like if you're tier 1, it's 4,000 outside, 1,000 indoors, and then if you're tier 2, it's half that. Is that right?
Good. That's really reassuring.
No alcohol in tiers 1 and 2.
Yeah, and then like tier 3 is still completely shut down. But if you're tier 1 or 2, you've got a little bit of hope, basically. And then that's until the end of March, I think, isn't it?
But the tiers are now national as opposed to regional. They're not so localized. Is that correct? Okay. I don't know. I haven't fully.
There will be local.
Oh, they will. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I guess the challenge is, and I just briefly spoke to Sarah Beale at Forum Events before, and obviously said it's good news. But the challenge is, if you're planning to do it in person and then they change the regional tier, you come back to square one.
Still the uncertainty, isn't it? Yeah.
Sporting events are coming back as well. I think they're having a maximum capacity of about 4,000 for outdoor sporting events.
Yeah.
Which is good news.
50% of capacity or 4,000, whichever is gretter.
I thought it was whichever's lower, isn't it?
Oh, whichever's lower. Sorry, whichever's lower.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So is that as of the 3rd of December or the 4th of December, whenever it was?
Yeah. Although I think the whole country starts on tier 3, and then as cases go down in local areas, then you'll get reduced down to your sort of tiers 2 and 1.
But the time-wise, because my golf club is opening on the 2nd, because it's 1 minute past midnight on the 2nd, and I thought it was.
You'll be down there with your golf club.
Yeah, they moved it forward by 24 hours.
My kids and my wife, but no, I'll be at the golf course. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. All right, brilliant. Well, thank you for the update. I felt awful because see all these LinkedIn posts of all these news updates, and I just hadn't had a chance between school run and various other things. I hadn't had a chance. So thanks for the update, guys. Thanks, Dan, for that.
Yeah, really. In the chat box as well, Dan's put a really good, very in-depth kind of explanation of what they've announced, which is brilliant.
Oh,
I posted it twice by mistake. Sorry, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, there's loads.
I'm very excited.
I was actually thinking you typed really quickly.
Directly copied from somewhere.
Oh dear. Okay, so first of all, we'll go round. Dan, I feel like we should promote you to like a proper panelist. Like, I think you've really? earned a slot this evening already.
I'm not dressed for the occasion. That's very kind of you.
So what I want to do is just go around everyone, see how you all are, see what you've been up to over the last couple of weeks. And if we could entwine with that, we've had a question about, has anybody got any new briefs that we're working on? Any new jobs come up? So perhaps we can talk about that and see how your last couple of weeks have been. So Robert, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hello everyone, nice to see you all. So last couple of weeks or since we last spoke, and I posted about this midweek. I felt very dirty doing a post without a live role. Goes against every ethic I have left. But the freelance market for me, when I launched that, I've been having lots and lots of conversations about January and February. People sort of starting to book people in for January and February. So, anything obviously live and hybrid is top of their list, but also live and virtual is top of the list. But also, weirdly enough, people looking for live people that can move into that producer role. Content, strategy, planning, and also people that know their arse from their elbow is obviously quite important. But the great news for me, I'm a retained recruiter. I've got 3 senior roles kicking off in January for a head of sales, a senior PM, and a project director. So
Great.
I'm very, obviously, you know, very pleased about that, but they won't be kicking off till, you know, the new year. And realistically, as you know, it's that Q1 and Q2, I think, will be when we really start seeing movement. So yeah, positive. Still no money, but positive.
Still piss poor, but you know, positive piss poor.
Positive piss poor, yeah.
Piss poor
Excellent.
with hope.
So you just mentioned about when you launched your freelance stuff. Is that linking? What I mean, tell me about your t-shirt. What's
very casual, thank you.
Yeah,
thank
that wasn't pre-planned at all.
Staged at all.
So I've got a SaaS recruitment platform going live next week, which is streamlining recruitment for those that want to do it themselves and for recruiters to be able to search.
Thanks for thinking of us. It's really nice of you.
But for you as well, for recruiters that want to find candidates that are qualified, pre-selected, relevant. We've got some amazing community partners. We've got Layal and the MIA, and we've got Diversity Ally and Fast Forward 15 and IMEX and HBAA and the MPI.
So many acronyms.
I know. And
I'm impressed you can rattle them all off. Can you tell us what they all actually mean?
Yes, go on.
I actually can, because I know this because of the last sort of 2 months. But no, that's going live next week. And also, the freelance was, as you guys know, all of our half our conversations are with agency owners, senior stakeholders, so we get to know in advance of what's happening, and everyone knows they'll need people, but nobody can afford the fixed overhead at the moment. It's just an obvious thing, and nobody's going to give business to an agency if they don't have people in it. So that means permanent, Q1, Q2, Q3 next year. So thank you for that. I owe you a tenner. Cheers.
Thank you very much. And how can people find out more about this? Where
So
can
the
they go?
website goes live next week, thehub.jobs. It's all about getting your CV on there at the moment, getting it populated. We'll be in a lot of press next week. Have a PR team. Look at that, eh? How flash is that? But no, I'm really looking.
Someone's doing well. I'm
not. It's literally it's the last roll of the die. Otherwise, I'm going to be applying for Expo Cast in Albany. That's my next role. That's I can't even get a job delivering Asda and stuff because I'm a type 1 diabetic, so they won't touch me. Amazon won't let me drive lorries for them and stuff. Ridiculous, but there you go.
What?
Well, I'm type 1 diabetic, so I'm in that, danger level along with sort of over 65s and stuff.
It's amazing how so many people have said to me recently, so, if things don't pick up, will you get a normal job?
Well, why don't you go recruit in another area? Why don't you pivot to another area? Oh yeah, fucking hell, I'll do that Monday. Yeah, all right, no worries.
Oh God, I hate that one.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've spent 20 years honing and being a specialist. Last 10 years being a specialist. But no, I'll just go and do finance recruitment Monday. Yeah, don't worry.
My dad was suggesting that I recruit for the track and trace people, which was brilliant. I was like, okay, wonderful, lovely suggestion. I was like, I don't really have those kind of connections to recruit for 18,000 people for the NHS, but you could always give it a shot.
You've got to love them, haven't you? You've got to love them. So, Lils, how have you been over the last couple of weeks? And anything, any light at the end of the tunnel?
It's still been super quiet. I do have a new vacancy in, which is for a conference producer, an experienced producer, which I'm super thrilled about. Looking for someone with about a year's experience, ideally on producing finance events. And it's a permanent position, which is pretty impressive as well, considering the circumstances. Yeah, really good. So the caveat with that one is the location. So it's actually based in Hertfordshire, in not Marlow, near Harlow. Is it Harlow or Marlow?
Yeah, Harlow.
Harlow in Hertfordshire. So
these are the sorts of things you should know. Is it?
it's near Stansted Abbots.
UK.
Well, yeah, but that's quite important because it's not a remote role. So they are looking for someone who's happy to go into the office and, within the kind of Hertfordshire area, and they can commute to the.
If you want to send me a thing, I'll pop it out on LinkedIn for you if you want.
Oh, thank you. I'll send you a link to the advert.
Lils, do you mind if me asking why is it that they're not up for that remote working? So I think there's a lot of talk around employers now, being really super flexible and, working from home, but obviously it's not going to suit everyone. So what's the idea behind your clients sort of saying it's important that they're in the office?
They're a very, very sales driven company. So I know that their culture is very sales driven. So I think for them, they feel that productivity and motivation is kind of best with that kind of buzz in the office. I think they all seem to feel that they bounce off. I think, you know, that it's not that uncommon. I think a few, you know, I have heard of lots of companies saying, you know, whilst they would like to offer more flexibility, the actual, I suppose it's about retaining the culture within the team or within the office. And yeah,
that, isn't there? Over the next year or two, there's gonna be a lot on how to keep that culture going. Like a friend of mine had moved to Prague actually about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and he's now managing a team, not in events, not in recruitment. And yeah, he actually came to me and said, you know, how have you got any tips on how to like keep that social element between a team when everyone's remote? Because it's like everyone's bored of the quizzes, they're bored of the cocktail making. Like, what can you do? And I put a post on LinkedIn and it got zero traction, and I couldn't help him at all. But it'd be, I don't know, I think that's gonna be quite a big piece over the next like few years, really, in terms of, you know, where companies are leaning more into the remote working, but how do you keep that social element and keep people feeling like a tight-knit team?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, you know, where you are in your career makes a big difference. I think when you've been doing the same thing for several years and you're really kind of in the swing of things, it's easier to do that remotely. But I have to say, you know, when you're new into a job, or, you know, you're in the early kind of years of your career, the things you learn isn't just, you know, there's only so much you can learn through training, even if it's done online. It's overhearing conversations from, you know, people on the phone in the office, and you know, everything I learned, you know, through working at Albany. There's, you know, when I first joined Albany under the old director, you know, I had obviously training when I joined, but everything I learned about the clients and all the little nuances with each company that we work with and how they like to be treated and how, you know, the relationships we've got and, you know, our main contacts to, you know, who we speak with, that was all learned just by sitting in the office and hearing other people's phone calls and just absorbing what's going on around you. So
Definitely.
I think some roles can 100% be done remotely, and there's, you know, I almost feel there's no need for it to be, you know, you don't have to go in. But there are some jobs, I think, especially if it's a sales driven role, I do think when you're dealing with clients and you're constantly on the phone and speaking to people, I think it is important to be around others when you're doing that, because you learn so much around your colleagues.
Definitely.
Do we think there's going to be like at some point some like massive tech disruptor coming through that completely changes the way remote teams interact with each other to try and sort of counteract that?
I honestly think that barrier. I think you'll see the opposite. I think all these Twitter, Facebook, all these people that came out and made this big bold statement about you're going to work from home until the end of next year or whatever it is, that's a cost thing, because they've got break clauses, they've got insurance because of their offices. Once these people realize, I can tell you, when I worked agency side, you remember the amount of meetings that someone would walk past and say, you know, hey Lils, can you just pop into this meeting? Mike, what do you think of this? Natasha, can you just, when businesses realize that they're losing revenue, it will be, I think 2 to 3 days at home, 2 to 3 days in the office will be the norm. But there is no way, because managing a team, especially remote, is nigh on impossible. I don't care what technology. In fact, have you heard of that technology called Sneak? Have you seen that? That's like the big thing that everyone's talking about.
No, not heard of Sneak.
I'm very conscious you haven't got to Mike about what he's up to, but did you speak for Expo Cast?
Yeah, I have no voice.
You're just cutting me out there. That was cut Natasha out. Mike can do both.
But
I thought it was the other way around.
I thought you did, yeah. But no, this Sneak stuff is, you know, like with the webcam. So it's a webcam that's on the whole time. So instead of like a Zoom, it's on the whole time. And what it does is that how they sell it is, say like the four of us were in a team in the corner.
They've called it Sneak. Sorry, they've called
it. That's a horrible name.
When the guy was interviewed and they said, like, you know, isn't it a bit like naughty? And he went, no. So why'd you call it Sneak? He went, no, it's not Sneak like that. And they said, well, why have you called it Sneak? And apparently he was like, But the idea is, how they sell it is, say I want to chat with you, Lils, right? Instead of me going, right, I'll send Lils an email and arrange a Zoom call, I can just press a button and go, bing, Lils. And you get a thing that says, Lils, Robert wants to chat with you. And you and I come on straight away, Lils, have you got the last year's accounts or something like that? So that was the premise. What it does is, you know, like cars, like if you start to nod in a car like that, the car will go beep, 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 beep. So if you disappear for a certain period of time, it flashes up to your line manager. Natasha's gone away from her desk.
Oh, wow.
Again.
You can set it to take a photo every 10 minutes, take a photo.
Yeah.
And this is software. This is being used by major corporations.
That's awful.
Increase team stuff. But that's what technology will do. It's not there to, you know, enhance the working environment. It's, you're not in the office, so we don't think you're working, so we're going to keep an eye on you.
Dodgy ground, isn't it?
Yeah, probably surveillance working. That's awful.
Yeah.
I think
we've had a couple of comments, sorry, Mike, in the chat. Just Charlotte saying, you know, it's about the social element as well, isn't it? You know, of actually interacting with people, and it's that you make friends. That's how me and Mike met. We became best friends at work, and it was that social element. And Kate, I know, Katie's also, oh God, that's awful. That is awful.
Never
Katie,
do that again, Robert.
No, it's so disturbing.
Especially in a medium t-shirt.
I know, it's supposed to be extra large. It's supposed to be extra large. Look at the thing.
I'm only joking. You put it on, though.
Katie's also said that you know, especially for events people, you know, for you know, we are social butterflies, and I think, you know, it's,
I really agree with that.
And you know, we are face to face, you know, it's go all the time, and I think it's really knocked our industry hard, because we are so social, we love that face to face interaction. So yeah, it's a really good point from Katie and Charlotte there. Thank you. And
also for new business as well, the amount of pitches I've won by when you meet that decision, when I was agency side, not recruitment, the amount of people that you go out for a drink with, and at like 1 in the morning, they're like, and let me tell you, Shadi, right? And you're like, yeah, no, I'm listening. And then you're like, right, I've got all that up here. And then you know, they'd never tell you that stuff. They wouldn't tell you that stuff. Yeah. I actually started smoking in recruitment to go outside and smoke with the decision makers. That's what I used to smoke for, because I'd stand outside warehouses and great big distribution centers.
Is that what you used to tell your wife? I have to smoke, darling. This is part of my job.
I'm on the only when we're on a golf course diet at the moment.
Right.
How's that going? Is that why you can't wait for the golf course to open up again?
Yeah, it's great at the moment.
So, Mike, how are you? How are you doing? Anything exciting going on in the world of ExpoCast?
In the world of ExpoCast, I think the world is the key phrase there. So, like, we've been, well, I don't know about you. You've been busy actually with your
hair.
I was gonna say virtual exhibition sales project that you've had on, but no, because obviously there's sort of roles. My focus has been business development, and we've been using the UFI country tracker basically to look at which countries are open for events. And I've had a ton of potential client calls basically over the last 2-3 weeks.
Oh, brilliant!
And actually, the lesson learned there is that just because a government has said, you know, you're allowed to run shows, doesn't make them viable. Like, you know, most exhibitions, because obviously that's what ExpoCast does more than anything else. Most exhibitions have got a fairly substantial international element, and so where the travel corridors are all still shut, there's no point in the organisers running shows. So everyone I've spoken to is like, yeah, well, we're allowed to run shows, but there's no point because we can't get our exhibitors in the country. So I've got, I mean, we've got sort of, I've got 1.5 roles over in Singapore, and that's about it. And I think, to say, you know, sort of echo what Robert was saying earlier, especially off the back of the vaccine news that we've had over the last couple of weeks, I think December's always pretty dead. January, February, March, hopefully we'll see stuff start to drip through. Q2, it might get a bit busier, and then I'm hoping at some point in Q3, Q4, we might get to pre-pandemic levels. It all depends on. I think it's almost, for me, it depends more on the international travel opening up more so than events actually being allowed to run. So like today's news of business events up to 4,000 people potentially being viable if you're in tier 1, happy days. But that doesn't help the organisers who are running international shows at all. Right. You know, they're looking for the travel changes rather than the events changes, if that makes sense.
But honestly, I'm not just saying this as a recruiter, but you know, next year, I think we talked about this last time. You know, our industry is running at 1 to 5% capacity. you know, we are literally on our arse. Now, even if we only grew to say 30% next year, because it won't be till 2022 that we'll be anywhere near like 70-80% of last year. So say we grow to like 30% next year, that is still a 25% increase in a sector that's worth like 100 and whatever billion across, you know, probably 300 billion if you take in travel, meetings, events and all that. If you had a 25% growth year in any other sector, you would all be, you know, like Scrooge McDuck from, you know, DuckTales. You know, it would be insane. And next year will be 100%. Recruitment will be like the Wild West. People will be recruiting like they've never recruited before, and agencies and brands will be scaling up, because I think I said this at the beginning, people aren't going to give business to it. They're not going to go, oh yeah, we'll give you that business. Who's your head of creative services? Who's your planner? Who's your exhibitions? Oh yeah, we'll get them later. They're just not going to do it. You won't get the business. They will have to have. So recruitment next year, honestly, is, I love it, don't get me wrong, but it scares the crap out of me. All these high street contingency recruiters that we all know the names of, they're going to make an absolute fortune just by moving people around who've, you know, banging CVs out, and they'll make a fortune, and it will be at the detriment to the industry, but it will be incredible. I'm so looking forward to next year.
Yeah.
Basically what you're saying is this time next year, Rodney will be millionaires.
We'll be millionaires. Yeah. Do you know what? It's never interested. I've never wanted to be a millionaire. I don't know if that shows that I don't have any drive, but it's just never interested me.
You're just lazy.
I'll tell you how I gauge whether I'm doing well. I've just bought myself a Lego Millennium Falcon, which I pretended was for my son, and I didn't even tell my wife I was going to buy it. I just bought it.
Those are really expensive, right?
That is how I roll.
I'm not even ashamed of how jealous I am right now.
That is how I roll, Mike.
I love that. You and I are going to be lifelong friends now you've told me that.
Although I did just buy the Mandalorian Lego as well.
Well, you've lost me on the Lego front, I'm afraid.
We need to do an event about Lego, I think.
Yeah, let's do it.
There must be a Lego exhibition of some sort.
There are people that make money from opening Lego. I am working. Who's that? I am working at Lego now.
Hold on.
Wow.
Erica, you're working at Lego.
Wow.
I am working at Lego now. Well, I mean, obviously, if you wanted to. There are honestly websites where people open Lego, open toys, people video it, and they get paid. Erica, if you want to send Mike and I the Ultimate Collection Millennium Falcon, which is 650 quid, we will build it next time.
I need the £1,000 Death Star as well, please.
Yeah, the Death Star. We'll have that as well.
Is this bribery?
What are you doing at Lego, Erica?
I'm working at customer service there.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, in the meantime, it's not bad.
Just still wondering.
Do you get any perks, Erica?
Lego show, Rob.
I get a good discount on the set. So next year, if I find a good job with you guys, then I'll give you all the Millennium Falcons you want.
Oh, there you go. It's over. See you later.
Oh, hold on.
But it's amazing, yeah. So whenever you need a piece or anything, we're just there on the phone. And now we are like in the very busy week, so it's good.
Oh wow!
I feel like we've got off subject already, Natasha.
Yes, let's bring it back. I just wanted to say that, like, personally, I've had quite a good couple of weeks.
Sorry, carry on.
What are you boys doing?
What? Nothing. Not playing with Lego. Definitely not playing.
Oh right, okay. Yeah, so I was just going to say I've had a really positive week. We've been doing some recruitment for EventMind. They're virtual event specialists. So obviously it's the virtual side that's kicked off, and that's what's, you know, secured this role for us. And you know, so it's amazing. I was on the phone, Mike rang me, and I was beaming, wasn't I? I was like, it's such a good mood. He's like, what's up with you? And I was just like, I'm so happy. He's like, why? I'm like, I just forgot how much I loved recruiting. I just love it. I've missed talking to people and being really positive. Yes, I've got this role I want to talk to you about, and I've missed that so much.
So, let's be honest, you've missed the invoice as well, though. Let's be brutally honest about this.
I have, but it really wasn't about that at this point, because we've changed our recruitment model in terms of invoicing, actually, and we've got a few different ways. We're not contingency really at the moment. We've got a few. We've introduced. Not sure how much I should divulge, but we've got this new pick and mix system, which basically you can pick any part of the recruitment process and we will do it. So if it's just a case of you just need somebody to create job descriptions and advertise and manage that ad response, we will price you up how much that costs and we will do it. So I think a lot of people are put off by the large recruitment fees, and although they're completely justifiable for the amount of work you put in, sometimes you want to have that
on most recruiters, Natasha.
Pardon?
I would debate that with most recruiters, if I'm honest.
I mean, we're talking about us, right?
Oh,
like we're worth every penny, right? Every second. Yeah, so we're offering a slightly different service, and that's really helped us grab some roles. And yeah, so that's been a positive for us. So yes, things are moving. I've got a couple of roles coming up at the end of December, beginning of January. So things are moving and there's some positivity there. So hopefully that will give everybody else a little bit of glimmer of hope, which is great. We've got some questions in the chat box, but just before we do, we've talked a lot about culture in the last couple of, Lils was talking about culture. Mike, you mentioned it, how important it is. And actually, in the past, I've had a lot of conversations with candidates about, unfortunately, the role wasn't a great fit for you. And I've heard this so many times. It just wasn't the right culture fit. And I think that's really, it's quite an ambiguous comment, I think, when you're giving that feedback to candidates. So when we talk about culture, can you explain what you're referring to when you say culture? What is culture in a business?
I often compare job hunting and recruitment to dating. I honestly think that kind of chemistry does need to apply for both parties when they're going into a new company. I think sometimes, candidates can look brilliant on paper, or companies can look brilliant on paper, but if the fit isn't there, if you don't gel, you don't click, you don't feel that that's the right kind of person that you can see yourself bouncing ideas off, or working really well in the team, or kind of having necessarily the same kind of level of drive. I can see, there are some companies, they work at such a different pace, or they've got quite a unique style of working that they've, it can be a frustrating feedback to hear. I really do feel people's pain when they hear that. It's the worst one to hear, but at the same time I do get it. And I think that's where, again, when you go through a recruiter, that the good thing about going through decent recruiters, they would have seen that client and that office in person and would have met their candidates in person. So you'd already get a feel for that kind of cultural fit before you've even submitted their CV to the client. There've been a few times I've met candidates who've wanted to go for certain roles, and I've actually discouraged them and just said, to be honest, I don't think this is the company for you. I don't think you would enjoy working here, or I don't think this would kind of be the right kind of environment. And I would be really honest and explain why. But quite often it boils down to places being very sales driven and quite, if someone's come from, like a membership organization and then they're moving to a really commercially driven, sales driven environment, it is a bit of a culture shock. And actually not everyone thinks or works. Very different. So I think
no, I completely agree. And I mean, if we're talking about what is culture in terms of that's been used as feedback of why you haven't got a job, sometimes that's a cop out and there's another reason, and if your recruiter's good enough, they'll know what that reason is and they'll be able to kind of relay it to you properly. I don't know, but I think for me, like, it's all about being genuine. So getting that back. So, I mean, I was doing interview prep with a candidate earlier today for this role I've got in Singapore. And they've got really particular, they know exactly how they want to run the team that they're in for this job for. And I just sort of said, I could try and prep you how to answer the questions in the way that the client will want to hear, but I'd be doing you a disservice. Like, you're better off just being honest to how you're actually going to run that team. And if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. Because if you bullshit just to get the job, then it's going to fall apart as soon as you're in the door. So I think it's about genuineness. But yeah, absolutely. A good recruiter will have a decent idea of what that culture's like and whether or not it's gonna work. And I think sales sales teams are often the most obvious ones where you can tell if someone's going to fit or not. And yeah, certainly if you've come from a more sedate side of things, to go into a bit more of a boiler room culture can be a bit of a shock. But I think a lot of the companies who've got that more boiler room culture, their recruitment process is pretty honed in. They know what they're doing. I mean, I remember working with an organizer a few years back who just for any old sales role, you'd still have to go through 3 or 4 different interview processes, and it was like full on, and like candidates would drop out because they were just fed up. And it's like, that's fine, that's why this organizer's got that process, because it filters out the people who aren't going to hack it long term. You've got to be able to kind of battle through if you're going to make it work.
I think they're like testing resilience. Basically, I loved the phrase chemistry that you used there, Lils. I think that's a really good word to use, and it is a bit like dating, isn't it? You're looking for that chemistry, and sometimes you can't always put your finger on it, can you? But you just don't feel that connection, and that's okay, isn't it, to feel that?
Yeah. I always encourage people to kind of trust their gut when it comes to job searching, and it's really tough for people at the moment who are literally desperate for a job, and they'll probably say yes to anything. But I really do urge people to kind of really trust their gut when they do have an interview if something's not quite right. And it's just this is why I compare it to dating. When you've met with someone and you can't put your finger on it, but it's just not quite right, then I really do think people should follow their gut with that. And yeah, definitely with sales teams, but also with operations as well. If you're working for a company on international events, you're traveling all the time, it's very intense, you're doing long haul journeys, you're in stressful situations, working on site with people, and if you don't have the right people who you just know would work really well togetger, then
that's it. If you're living in the pocket of other people, like if you don't get on, it's going to be an absolute
sorry, Robert, I interrupted you there.
No, it's not. I think that the cultural fit at the moment, I mean, I call it cultural fitness because obviously that's what the whole fitability thing is about. But I think cultural fit at the moment, it's actually getting quite a bad rep. It's quite, and I can see Gabby's on from Diversity Ally as well. And I think there's a very fine line, but it's a very thick line, but it's a line that needs to be clear. Sometimes with cultural fit, people think it's we're looking to hire this type of person, as in we want that type of person. No one wants to recruit a drone. Nobody wants to do that. But exactly as Mike alluded to, if you are, say, a shouty, outgoing, bit of a sweary, bit of a, there are certain office environments that you are not going to fit. If the culture is that we will go out for a beer after work, that might not be the case. It doesn't matter what. Sorry, I've just seen the comment from Gabby. Sorry. She's put, sorry, I'm in my dressing gown. So
I think that may have been a private message to you, Robert, because we've not seen that.
We've not seen that.
I was like,
brilliant.
Come on. I was like, come on. Anyway, sorry. But I think the thing is about that is, and let's be honest, cultural fit is always is actually sometimes used by really poor recruiters, really poor hiring team, as an excuse to you came second.
Yeah.
Really close second. I mean, I can tell you how, like, hundreds of times when I was agency side, that we came second in a pitch. The other agency were just a better, it's a really poor way to say we don't know how to feedback properly. We don't want to say you were terrible at interview. We don't want to say you didn't answer. We just want to use it. And like exactly as Mike alluded to, if it's a recruiter, it's because they don't have a relationship enough with the client to say, sorry, that's not acceptable. That's not feedback that I can genuinely give someone that they're going to take into another role. Feedback that, and people, weirdly enough, people don't want to hear it. I've done, I do the pre-selection, and I've done interviews with people after an hour and a half, and I go back to them and say, look, unfortunately, you didn't come across really well in an interview. You were this, that, and they sit and go, yeah, but why? What's that got to do with you? Just put me in front of the client. And you're like, but this is the whole point, is we are there because we know what we're doing. That's that's what we're supposed to be there for. And I think people will say they want feedback, but when you say to people, this is the feedback, this is why, this is what you, unfortunately,
it's criticism though, isn't it? Like it can be personal. So
but it's like you said, dating, Mike. The problem is, unfortunately, like dating, is you can't go and have a load of one-night stands. You can't just go and get a few jobs there and there. Just, you can't. Well, you can't. Well,
isn't that what the probation period's for?
I can hear an HR person running to a machine right now. I think cultural fit does get a bit of a bad rep, but I think if it's explained in a proper way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like we all four of us, completely different backgrounds, completely different, but we just get on. You know, I'm here with all of you. But if you looked at that from the outside, you might say, do you know what? That's not a cultural fit. It's not a negative. It's also not a positive. But it's, you know, as humans, we want to be around people that are slightly like-minded, but also that candidate needs to bring something that the business doesn't have. Like they have to add value as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I've got actually a question already here from an old candidate of mine. We were discussing interviews, and this is sort of relating to the whole culture thing, but there was a really uncomfortable comment made to this person during their interview. The client or the person that was interviewing them turned around and said basically they're a bit of eye candy and it'd be quite nice to have them in the office. And the candidate, you know, said to me, I didn't know how to deal with that, you know, because, you know, obviously they're in a position of really wanting a job. They've prepped, they've gone to this interview, a face-to-face interview. It was, you know, they've done all this hard work, and then suddenly they're really taken aback by it. And they've sort of asked me, you know, what's your advice in that situation? So
tell them they're a prick and go straight to their HR or their line manager.
Yeah, and then write a Glassdoor review.
Write a Glassdoor review. I'm not a great fan of naming and shaming on LinkedIn because everybody's got their own stuff going on. But I think stuff like that is, and I think you alluded to it earlier, though, unfortunately, Natasha, and you're right. Look, people are, the phrase I've been using at the moment is people, you know, they're looking for work. They're not looking to work for you. You know, they'll say what they want, but there's a certain line that you yourself as a human can't cross, and that is to be demeaned, insulted, or to be treated in other way. And it's, you know, Mike and I know this. We've been told this so much that we're eye candy that we're just used to it now. You know, we're just used to it. It rolls
off a duck's back, isn't it? No, but also I think it's important if you're in an interview and someone's said something inappropriate like that, and if you've gone through a recruiter, it's really important to feed that back to the recruiter.
I'd love to know the percentage of recruiters that would do anything with that information.
Oh, exactly. No, but this is what I was going to say is, you know, if your recruiter's worth anything, they will either drop that client or they will
at least
do whatever it takes to educate that client, or, you know, or perhaps go above that line manager's head, whatever. I don't know. It's just that sort of thing can't. I completely agree, Rob. You know, 95% of recruiters would just, okay, fine. Well, that candidate doesn't get the job. I'll move on to the next one, which is horrendous.
Do you think that many recruiters would let that slide? I mean, that's 100%. Huge. Really?
Unfortunately,
that makes it sound awful.
I know.
I do think there are, you know, especially if they work for someone else. You know, if it's us and our business reputation is on the line, you know, absolutely, you cut ties immediately. But if you are, you know, if you're a bit, you know, you're not as experienced and you don't really know how to deal with that information, you know, it's I can imagine a lot of recruiters just, you know, letting it go over their head because it's about the money for, you know, a lot of them, and that's terrible, but it is what it is, isn't it?
I would say 80% of recruiters would literally just not, you know, they would say what they wanted to say. But unfortunately, Lils, as you know, I'm a great believer that recruiters themselves are wonderful people. I don't think recruiters are bad people. Recruiters, though, are working for line managers, working for businesses on archaic processes, KPIs, SLAs, how many CVs have you sent, how many bills, how many interviews. It's just so demoralizing what recruitment has become. However, and weirdly enough, I see Mark's on the call as well, and I had a catch up with Mark the other day about this. Unfortunately, clients let this shit storm of a wheel continue by thinking that that's recruitment. And while clients continue to pay for, you just bang me CVs, you just tell me what I want to hear, and I'll hire them. And if they work out, great. And if they don't, I get a bit of a rebate, or we just find someone else. It won't stop. No one's going to stop it. No business. That's why I went retained, because no business will say, no, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm not going to keep taking your money for doing a piss poor service that doesn't take me a lot. And whether that's me being a bit cynical about recruitment, it's just, I've seen it so much. I've seen it as a candidate, as a client, and as a recruiter. It's just, it's, you know, and I'm embarrassed to be a recruiter. You know, you say you're a recruiter and people go,
oh, yeah, oh, you're one of those. I'm going to throw in another question, and I think it's quite important actually. Have we seen a drop? I'm saying my important question. You're waving your bottle around.
Not a lot of people.
It's all about the branding tonight. Is that
not a lot of people know about Tuaca? It's secret. It's wonderful.
Is Tuaca sponsoring the hub, by the way?
Oh,
it
Jesus,
should be.
It should have. That would have been amazing.
It really should.
Sorry, Natasha.
Sorry, back to the important question.
Sorry.
Have we noticed a drop in salaries, bonuses, and incentives recently? And for somebody that is looking, you know, is a newbie coming into the industry, perhaps straight out of university, you know, how do they know what to be looking for? Because, you know, yeah, what's going on?
I haven't seen enough vacancies to sit.
Oh, God.
I don't know.
I've seen a significant drop in salaries, definitely. I've and definitely with bonuses and commission, that's pretty much stopped for most businesses. I think that sounds quite I think that's quite standard at the moment. Businesses aren't making profit, which is quite fair. I've had a few companies who are offering a certain salary and then with the intention and saying, look, we're being transparent at the moment. We do need the staff, but we don't have the budget, and we are with every intention going to increase this, you know, by, you know, within 6 months or at the earliest time. And I do believe them when they say it. Yeah, I have definitely seen a slight drop in salary. I've also seen a drop in people, you know, their experience and what they're applying for. So people who are way overqualified, you know, with several years experience applying for really junior paying positions.
Yeah. But also, I've seen people asking for like 3 to 5 years of virtual experience. It's like, what are you talking about? It's only been going 6 months. Like, I saw the other, I am seeing a lot, especially with the new business stuff, a lot of people being offered commission only roles and people taking them, which I've never understood in my life. And you're right, Lils. I mean, I know I'm coming across a bit of an arse tonight, but I've had a few things on to it's annoyed me. But I think, putting my cynicism aside, I do believe that these clients, the reason that salaries are lower at the moment is, you're right, like clients are like, we don't have as much money. But I wish they would say that rather than, you know, 3 to 5 years experience, MBA in or CIM in marketing, £28,000. You know, it's like, just say, like, we have a budget of 25 to 30. We would love this, but we'll speak to you if you can do this. But they don't, and it comes across as lowballing, which, you know, if you go into a business and start in a business on a salary that you think is taking the piss, you can't tell me that's not going to affect your work and how your loyalty to that brand and how you know, it's just crazy. But it's where we are at the moment. You know, we're still in crisis mode. We're still in disaster recovery. We're still trying to get through this. And we're
still licking our wounds and trying to sort of work out. Interesting thing with the bonus and the commission, surely if you're bringing in the business, then the commission is there to be had, you know. So
if the business still isn't making a profit, even if you're bringing in business, they're literally just losing so much money every single week at the moment. It's, you know, even with sales coming in, it's not enough. You know, and also sponsorship and delegate sales, I mean, especially sponsorship sales is really low at the moment. You know, people don't want to invest as much money in sponsoring a virtual event like they would with a physical event.
I think and like, not all of the overheads that you had pre-pandemic for companies that ran physical events, like, obviously the overheads of a virtual event might be lower, but they haven't shed all of the physical overheads anyway, so they're still paying for all of that without anything physical. So like, your virtual events got to make crazy amounts of money.
Virtual's like a license to print money, though. I was one of the investors in the new business, the hub.jobs, don't know if I've mentioned that. They were talking, they're a 40 million turnover, and their turnover has reduced by 60%, but their profit is reduced by 30. So 60% revenue drop in, you know, overall, but only 30%. But of course, it's a nightmare. But they don't want to run virtual because that's still a lot of difference. But the virtual, you are paid. It's actually like the dream we used to have. When I was agency side and we were pitching for stuff, and we're like, all these ideas were coming up with all this content. We're not getting paid for this. All this time, we're not getting paid for this. Whereas now, you can put in 50 days of pre-prod and the client will go, okay, 50 days of pre-prod. Whereas before they would get their pen out and go, right, what are you doing on that day? What are you doing on that? And you'd have to go through your pre-prod with a fine tooth comb. Whereas now, if you've got the people, if you've got a freelancer in and you're paying them 350, 400 quid a day, you put that into your budget, you can bill them out at 450 to 500 to a client. So you're making a profit on your freelancers plus your time as well. I mean, it's insane the money that you can make if you were virtual only, but yeah, it's that's huge drops as well, 60%. Nuts.
Yeah,
most companies, they're still paying for their own overheads as well. They've still got their rent to pay, even though everyone's working from home.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got about 10 minutes before we need to wrap up. And there was a couple of questions we had from last round, and we still haven't got through them, but it's amazing that, people have got these questions and want to bring them to the table. Really quickly, if we can just give a one sort of sentence answer on these two things, that'd be great.
You can't ask a recruiter that.
I know, honestly, and I'm the worst, so it's hard. So we've had a question about salary and when you should bring up the conversation about salary. And I think this is a really interesting topic because a lot of roles are advertised, aren't they? You've got that awful competitive salary. What the hell does that even mean? What's competitive to you might not be competitive to the next person. It's just
competitive means ridiculous. They want to pay under the market rate.
No, it means they don't know. And I would even question it's a role in if a recruiter advertises competitive salary, they're not close enough to the client, or they've seen the client has advertised it somewhere, so they're trying to fish for candidates so they can spec them in, or they're just trawling the market to see who's available so they can spam their database. There is no way on earth, if somebody doesn't put a salary bracket, that person knows what they're doing.
So the question is then, if you start talking to a hiring manager, so it's the first thing you say. Because I know there's a lot of people out there who dance around the question because they want to make a good impression.
Hi Natasha, I've seen your job advert for a PM. You've put competitive salary. I'm looking for 50 to 60. Does that fit within your bracket?
Yeah.
And if they say no, then ta-da, goodbye.
I remember years ago, I went for a business development role and I got to interview stage and it got to the end and they're like, have you got any questions? Like, yeah. So obviously this is a sales role, so I'm assuming there's some commission. They're like, no. And I said, what? So that was it. That was done. There's this, but obviously I should have just asked that question way earlier
at the beginning, because it's a waste of everyone's time not talking about salaries. Because at the end of the day, as much as we want to love our jobs, we want to get passionate about them, we need to make a certain amount to survive.
But obviously not everyone's necessarily got the confidence to just ask what the salary is, and to be honest, even if you ask, they might not tell you.
That's the good thing about going through a recruiter though, because you can ask them and be really straight. I mean, no recruiter, you'd be mad to be a recruiter, and why would you waste your time putting a candidate forward if they're looking for a different salary? You can always ask a recruiter. The only awkward time is when you're applying for a role directly, and that's where it's a bit tricky. But
from your guys' experience then, how, because as a recruiter, I can't necessarily think of any time that I've been working on a job where we've advertised it as competitive salary. I can't. So for me, the only times I really see it is when it's advertised by the company itself.
When it's
bollocks.
When it's bollocks.
Because let's be honest, recruiters, we get paid a percentage of the salary. That's how we get paid. So we have to know what the salary is to quote to the client. I mean, obviously, I get paid up front. So this is what I'm going to charge you, Mr. and Mrs. Client. So we have to know what the salary is.
Yeah.
If any time you see an advert, and who's really good at this, this is a live event, so you would know who I meant. But they do it all the time. They I see them everywhere. You go on event jobs now, there's 4 to 6 jobs from that certain agency, and it says, you know, we're looking for a project manager's virtual, we're looking for this virtual, salary competitive. It's
do you know what? In my
experience, there's no jobs there.
It's mad.
Yes.
And in my experience, it's when clients have told me directly they don't want their other employees knowing what they're going to pay this person. Now that which
should be paying their employees more.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But also as an agency, you never disclose the name of the company you're advertising for in your advert. You keep it, you know, you can say, oh, working for a B2B events company based in Shoreditch, you know, you don't ever say the name, because otherwise people can go directly, or your competitors will go for that, you know. So it doesn't matter if you put the salary on the advert, because you're not stating the name. There's no way for an employee who works for that company that they can't prove that's you're advertising for that company anyway. So that's a cop-out reason as well.
It's an interesting point though, because like my very first question when I do my briefing is, why can no one internally do this role? That's my very, very first question. Because if they say like, you know, there's no one with the seniority, there's no one that can step up, there's no one with the experience, like, right, so if no, then the salary should be, you know, tell everyone what the salary is, because I want your internal staff telling all their mates there's a job here, because that also helps me with my reach as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
so the direct answer to that is be direct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Also,
all right.
How is that for one sentence answers from all this?
on a very weird front though, and it's only, again, sorry to refer to Gabby in your dressing room, that refers back to, it's only this year that I've really thought about the question that we all ask as recruiters: what's your current salary? And this is the only year where I've ever thought, why am I asking that? Like, why am I asking what your current salary is? Is that something that is going to be a selection? Does that dictate anything? Or is that because that will help my client or me decide whether you are right for the role? And what that does is, it's only people like Gabby and Ashanti and Priya that have sort of put that into, you know, if somebody's, unfortunately, we still know there's a huge gender pay gap. There's still a huge, you know, black and brown people tend to be paid less. You know, there's a huge pay disparity. And that happens because people say, oh, I'm on 30 and the role is say 40 to 50. So people will offer 40 because they get a 10,000.
Yeah.
But they're still on the lower end.
Because as far as the company's concerned, that's a pay rise for them and they should be happy with it.
Exactly. And we were looking at some numbers about the amount of people being made redundant. And I think out of the 300 plus people I spoke with, 90% of them were female or from a black and brown background. And when you go in further, they were talking about how in their groups, because they were generally the lower paid people, they were let go first because people were like, well, you're lower paid, so it's easier to let go of you. And it scares the shit out of you. And
Yeah.
that, thank you, Gabby. And that is what things like competitive salary or that's what that does. That feeds that cycle of we'll pay you what we can get away.
Definitely.
I know we're wrapping up this one, but just another quick point on that, just kind of adding to what you're saying, Robert, is, you know, the one advantage of asking people what their current salary is as a recruiter is just to get an idea about market rates and what companies are paying, which companies are underpaying, you know, which ones to watch out for, because there are some companies that are terrible at paying decent salaries. So I think it's quite good.
Insight, isn't it? It's gathering
insight, exactly. If you're a sort of a specialist recruiter, I think it is important to know what companies tend to be paying their staff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One of the last placements I made before the pandemic, I think the candidate got like an extra 50% on top in terms of the basic salary. I think their basic salary ended up being just as much as their OTE was, and then their OTE was like an extra, God, I don't know, another like third on top. So like it was a massive increase, but they were just being completely underpaid. And that was that was a woman from an ethnic minority. Whether that's why, I don't know. But
it's a good point.
But I mean, sorry, Natasha, in terms of that question these days,
we're getting the look.
Shut up.
In terms of like whether, you know, asking that question at the moment, when I'm talking to candidates now, I'm kind of saying, I've split that question into three. It's what are you on now, or what were you most recently on? If there wasn't a pandemic and you were safe in a job, what would you be trying to get up to? And then, like, what's your bottom end?
Yeah.
Because that gives you the broadest range possible to be able to go back to that candidate with jobs as and when the market picks up. Because at the moment, that's kind of the most important thing for us, isn't it not? Like trying to give people as many opportunities as possible that's going to fit within their preferences and what they can afford to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. I really want to. I'll talk about this question because it was emailed in specifically for tonight's round. So, if you've been in the industry for say 20 odd years, you've never really had to apply for a role because you've been recommended or headhunted, or you've just kind of fell into your next position. What advice or tips have we got for those individuals who, quite frankly, it's like starting from scratch completely when it comes to CV, but specifically to interview? So what tips can we give them? Yes, Mr. Kenward?
On my website, I have created a template that you can download.
Excellent.
I think the biggest advice I would give people on a CV is think about what do you want people to say about you. It's not what you're trying to say, it's what do you want them to say about you. B, your CV is all it is your marketing document to get you an interview. That's it. That is literally all it is. So when you see all these things about 2 pages, 4 pages, whatever, it's, to me, 800, 1200 words, get in front of the interview. That's what a CV is. It's a piece of writing. It's a piece of marketing.
I like that analogy in marketing. It is, isn't it? You are marketing your specialities, your skills. Great. Okay.
So
I love the way she ignored you, Mike.
I know. I'm used to it. I'm used to it, Robert. So obviously, if you get past that, if you've got your CV written, my advice, obviously, you need practice at interviewing. So my advice would be apply to all of the jobs that say competitive salary. They're bollocks anyway, and then you just get loads of interview practice.
Brilliant.
Just on that very quick one though, sorry, is if you go on the hub.jobs, there is actually an advice and resources page with webinars around video interviewing and how to, because that is the new normal now. You're going to be interviewed via Zoom or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So webinars on marketing yourself on LinkedIn, interviews, all of that. Just go on the hub.jobs basically.
Do you sell those t-shirts on the website?
I was going to give these away to like small children, these t-shirts.
I've just got a couple of points just to add to that as well. So a really good tip I find for preparing for an interview is go through the job description and turn each bullet point into a question and think of a nice example that would relate to that, because you can almost guess what kind of questions might come up in the interview. Another thing, if someone's got 20 years experience, I would probably take the time to write down an addendum and really kind of use it as a memory jogger of what events have I worked on, which were really significant, what went wrong for these events, what was a really, what was a success, what were my budgets. Try and really go through and just have a clear idea about those kind of key facts, because chances are they're the ones that will come up, and that's what people tend to stumble on. So I would kind of just go through and just think of examples, as many solid examples as you possibly can that will directly relate to that specific position.
Yeah, it's great.
Just on that as well, before you go for that interview, I'm a really big advocate of asking your recruiter or your hiring person, whoever it is. Obviously, you're going to ask them, why have you put me forward? That's a given. But you should always ask, what skills gaps or what experience, what concerns do you have for putting me forward? Because if that recruiter or hiring manager can't tell you one thing, you're wasting your time going for interview, because you're not going to get it, because they don't know, you're just there as a benchmark. Because I think a decent recruiter, a decent hiring manager will put you forward and be able to say, actually, your virtual is more hybrid and we're looking, then you can deal with it there rather than even go to interview. Why waste your time? So I think it's because at the moment, interviews aren't as two-way as they should be, because Zoom is very hard to do a two-way interview, because your interview's got a list of questions, bang, 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 bang. So ask before you even get into interview, what is it, why is it, and go through that in advance.
Yeah, I mean, they're all such fantastic advice and tips, and really, really good. I mean, I can't add too much to that apart from, just practice. And I always pick up the phone and I talk to one of my friends who is completely out of that sector or industry, and I will tell them about the company I'm going to apply for, and if they don't understand what I've said, or they can't understand what the company does, then I've not grasped it quite right. Or, you know, so talking to others, running things by somebody else who is completely unbiased and removed from that sector or industry, I think is really, 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 really useful. So we still have tons of questions. We're going to have to wrap it up because it's 10 o'clock. But this event never feels like an event to me.
I can stay for that length of time, and then I've got to go.
Down it.
No, look how much Chewbacca I've drunk. That is not good.
What is that? As strong as whiskey?
It's 35%.
Have you drank that tonight?
Well, no, I think it was about there.
No, it wasn't.
It was. You saw it, Mike.
You better behave, otherwise you're not going to be able to go to golf if you carry on.
Full bottle. I'm 44 now. If I drank the whole bottle, I'd need 4 Ps.
Listen, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's joined us this evening. I'm sorry if we've not got to your questions. There are definitely questions that we've not answered tonight, so big apologies, but we will make note of them. And I would love to do a round 3. We probably need to do some marketing a little bit earlier.
I feel like this is going to go the full 12 rounds. I'm not going to lie.
It's just great. Hopefully you've learned something, or we've helped you. I learn stuff every single time we get together. I walk away with like my mind blown. I'm like, I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that. You know, all of those things. So, yeah. What? Oh, look at that. Oh, he's only got his own branded backdrop. Brilliant. Excellent.
Oh, thanks everyone.
So we'll let you all leave. Thanks again. We would love to do a round 3. If you've enjoyed this evening, do post it online. Let's get more people involved. Tag us in it. It's great for your personal branding. So, you know, all of that jazz on LinkedIn. That would be great. And just thanks so much for your support. That's it. It's a wrap. Ding dong.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.